Yeah, that's an is statement, that you would die, but why do we care if you die? Why do you care if you die? Why should you care if you die?
Again, I don't agree that there's this big divide, like David Hume said, between ought and is.
I don't care what you believe, bro. I want to know why. So what if my ought is, well, I want to urinate in my own pants? Why would that be wrong?
Well, if that is conducive to your well-being, that's fine. Then you ought to.
So it's hedonism.
Yourself.
So it's just hedonism. You're talking about hedonism as the ought.
It's a very particularly strange form of hedonism, but yeah.
So you think I'm a psychopath? I want you to understand and notate this, right? And it'll help you in your future debates. Psychopathy isn't real. If you can demonstrate that live right now, I'll send you $100 cash. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean by psychopath.
I know. This is what I'm talking about. This is a complete... Stop. I'm going to mute both of you. Hold on. You are... Correct me if I'm wrong. You'd say you're a pretty strong Sam Harris adherent. You kind of like what he lays out in the moral landscape and all that, right?
That's safe to say, yes.
That's safe to say. Okay, so I guess I would put it to... Do you... What disagreements would you have with Andrew's worldview? Or I guess I'll just put it to you more broadly, based on what you've listened to in the stream so far, whatever you've caught up to.
Glad I'm here to do your heavy lifting for you, PS.
Right. Now I'm moving into moderation to some degree. But what are your thoughts, Chris, on the conversation so far, epistemology wise?
Well, I didn't hear a lot, but
okay.
what I heard, the one thing that I really like from Andrew was that he sees the problem with, you know, I don't know if it's your view, Paul, but the might makes right kind of attitude. You know, if morality is just subjective, at the end of the day, it's the stronger person wins. You know, the person in power basically just gets to say what is considered moral and what is not, and necessarily he's going to you know, make himself out consider himself virtuous, basically, and everyone else who is not in power is going to be by definition immoral or
yeah, like
less
you, Paul.
virtuous. But you know, that's why you need an objective morality, like Andrew laid out, and I don't.
Well, not exactly like Andrew laid out, right?
Right. I don't think it has to be from a religious origin. I think.
Where else would it come from?
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's have the Sam Harris versus Christian fundamentalist zealot. I almost called you a neocon. I get so used to calling people neocons, but I know you're not a neocon, Andrew. So, but you're advocating for the secular objective moral view that you can derive an ought from an is.
Yes.
Okay. So
you're the first person, and you're the first person in history, then.
Right. So how do you do that without appealing to a grounding it in religion, Chris, like Andrew does?
Well, I would put it like Sam Harris. You know, moral statements or values are just simply one special, you know, a special type of fact. Basically, it's a fact. So there is no divide between facts and values. It's a fact about human well-being. So if you say murder is wrong, or let's say, I don't know, stealing from somebody, why is that wrong? Because it negatively affects well-being. You know, the psychopath. Then you would of course say, okay, the psychopath would disagree with you. And of course, it contributes positively to the person who wants something. And
why should we value well-being?
Well, the problem then comes up. That is also something Sam Harris talks about. What does it mean to value something? If you examine this word more closely, you come to the realization that valuing something necessarily entails that it in some way has to affect some conscious mind, and by affecting a conscious mind, affecting well-being. So
okay, so that's the is part. Let's just assume for a second it's correct. That doesn't give us the ought part of why we should value it, even if it's true.
Well, no. Okay, can you agree with me at least that you value your own well-being? I think you'd agree with that. Right, yeah. Okay, question answered. So what's a little more difficult probably to answer is, why should you value my well-being or the well-being of Paul, for instance? How would you answer that? If you don't have God, you would say, yeah, there's no reason to value my well-being or that of Paul's. Is that what your position is?
There's no objective standard for why I should.
Okay, say more.
There's no more I need to say. There is no objective standard for why I should, and I'd like you to demonstrate how there is.
Well, just imagine what kind of world you would live in if everybody had your attitude. If everybody thought,
yeah, that's just
like,
question begging. That's just question begging. I don't care how the world would look. That's still not driving an ought from an is. Even if the world looked like fucking Mad Max, right? Why shouldn't it look like Mad Max? That's the ought. These are the oughts, right? So these are the oughts that you have to tangle with, not the descriptive ises. Imagine what the world would look like. Maybe it is the case that it would look like shit. Why should I care, though? Why ought I care? Why ought anybody care?
Well, again, why ought we do anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why ought we?
Well, and the answer is, you would easily find out personally if you just stayed in bed and just asked that question, like, why should I stand up? Why should I do anything? You would very quickly come to the realization, if I just do nothing, I'm going to suffer here in bed because I'm getting hungry. I have to go to the bathroom. If I don't do either of those things, I will die and soil myself in my bedroom, and that's not conducive to well-being. So
this is not giving us an ought, bro. I'm sorry.
These
are just descriptive is claims still. No,
it is though. No, what ought you do in that situation?
Yeah, what ought you do in that situation? Ground it for me.
Well, you ought to stand up and go to the bathroom.
Why ought you do that?
Well, because otherwise you would die. You would die.
Yeah, that's an is statement, that you would die, but why do we care if you die? Why do you care if you die? Why should you care if you die?
Again, I don't agree that there's this big divide, like David Hume said, between ought and is.
I don't care what you believe, bro. I want to know why, absent your belief, right? I'm not trying to be mean. Okay, let me back up the rhetoric a little bit. Okay, this is PF's show. I promised him I'd be nice, so I'm going to say this the nicest way I possibly can. Assume for a second I don't give a shit about your death in any way, shape, or form. Because to be perfectly honest with you, I don't fucking know you, right? If you died tomorrow, the only way that I care about it is through the prism of I have a divine command, which says, listen, all human life is valuable. Okay, so this guy, his life is valuable. Even if you did horrible things, you're not above reform, all of this kind of thing. Absent this, right? You saying I have to go and urinate, so I ought to go urinate, makes no sense. Do you understand that? It makes no sense. It's a descriptive is, but when you get to the ought part, you're not bridging the gap for why it is the case that we ought to do the thing.
No, what does it mean to value something for you? What does it? Just tell me this, just so we can get this, can reach some agreement here.
To value something.
Yes.
So for me, I think value, well, I don't know. Are you talking like from a preferential standpoint or moral value?
Well, both. They're basically on a continuum for me. Like, if I prefer not to soil myself, that's a value, you could say.
Yeah, I could see that from a consequentialist standpoint for preference, but that's still not bridging the ought. Right. So you can just say we ought to do it because it's my preference. I get that. But that doesn't mean we share preferences. So what if my ought is, well, I want to urinate in my own pants? Why would that be wrong?
Well, if that is conducive to your well-being, that's fine. Then you ought to.
So it's hedonism.
Soil yourself.
So it's just hedonism. You're talking about hedonism as the ought.
It's a very particularly strange form of hedonism, but yeah.
Well, it's not.
Well, no,
I mean, hedonism is just saying to operate
no,
on the highest value.
Yes, you're technically.
Right?
Yeah, I was making a joke about shitting yourself as something that someone would consider hedonistic, but there are some strange people out there.
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witness, for example. Just kidding.
Hedonism is usually it's usually defined, I wouldn't be in favor of that, because it usually means just impulsively doing what is most pleasurable to you in the moment, and I'm not at all for that. What it means to do something that is conducive to your well-being, and that's the only thing you can in effect value. I mean, I will get into that if we have the time, but well-being
time,
is just entails anything that could possibly be experienced as positive by a conscious creature. So
well, let's hang on. I don't mean to cut you off, but can we just back the conversation up real quick?
Can I just finish this
I just want to know what well-being is.
Well, I will explain.
Okay.
If like a hedonist will prefer to cheat on his wife if he sees the hot waitress at the bar, because he just thinks, I have to have sex with her, she's so hot. But what you actually do, if you are a smart and wise person and care on a deeper level about your well-being, you don't do that, because you realize that your marriage is more important than having this one hookup, and you would say, okay, I can only be faithful to my wife because of God, but rationally it makes sense to behave faithfully towards your wife.
Okay,
and rationally it makes sense to not
got
murder the people in your...
Listen, I got to ask you something, though. Are these oughts universal?
Well, to a degree, they are universal.
Which ones are universal oughts?
Well, I think if you to reference Jordan Peterson to the enforced monogamy, I think what he means encouraged by enforced monogamy is it goes against a lot of people's immediate desires, but in general for a society it's conducive to well-being, I think. So in that case, because I used this example with cheating on your spouse, yes, it ought to be a generalizable principle, and not just for
so
one
people
person.
ought to follow their preferences.
People ought to do what is conducive to their well-being.
And their well-being is going to be assigned by their own personal individual preferences, isn't it?
Yes, but of course we can.
Then your universal ought is follow your preferences. It makes no sense.
Listen to me. If you can only do what is conducive to your well-being insofar it doesn't impinge on other people's
why ought you not impinge on other people's well-being?
Well, I think we talked about this already. I mean,
but you didn't give me a satisfactory answer to it.
Paul, didn't I give an answer to that already?
It's not a satisfactory answer because it's just begging the question.
I can't say if you gave a satisfactory.
You still are not bridging this is to the you ought to do this. You're not doing that.
Okay, then tell me this. What would you do? How would you behave towards the people in your life?
Regardless of how I would do it.
If you found out that God didn't exist.
Listen,
let him finish.
Regardless if my position is you ought to do everything that I always say forever and ever, and it's completely inconsistent and makes no sense, it has nothing to do with what you're saying right now. You don't ask me why. Well, how would you do X? I'm talking about your views here. And your view and preference is that, and your claim is that the is-ought gap can be bridged by your logic, by whatever this ideology is, and you have not demonstrated that at all. You're just saying that a person's individual preferences ought to be followed unless they don't impinge on someone else's universal preferences. It's like, okay, bro, that's been around for an awful long time, but it doesn't bridge the is-ought gap. It's not giving us any justifiable reason why we should obey this principle. None. You're just basically saying, this is my intuition, so you should do it.
I know.
I'm not saying it's just my intuition. I explained why it's not just my intuition. Why it rationally makes sense to design a society that way, and but I would like to have my question answered as well. How would you behave towards the people that you love the people in your life, if you found out that no, God isn't real and the Bible is just made up, written by humans, how would you behave towards the people in your life? How would that change your perspective?
You mean if there was no morality?
Yeah.
There was
Okay.
no
Oh
God.
man, I would
There was
act
no
like
God to ground
I would
it.
act like a savage beast and do all kinds of crazy shit. I'd go
think
out
I
and,
would too.
like I would go out and like just murder wild critters for the hell of it. I do whatever because nothing. There's nothing. There is
Just
nothing else. Why
critters?
shouldn't? Why?
Murder
And here's the
everyone.
thing. Here's the thing. Why shouldn't I do that?
I somewhat agree with
You're a psychopath then. I think you're a psychopath.
Okay, so you think I'm a psychopath. I want you to understand and notate this, right? And it'll help you in your future debates. Psychopathy isn't real. There is no diagnosis for psychopathy and never has been ever in human history, ever.
He pulls that one out. I think Chris's point is that
No,
you
I
are...
don't care. I don't care what you think Chris's point is.
Whoa!
Chris, to answer this, you say I'm a psychopath. Psychopathy doesn't even exist. So try again.
Okay, I'm not gonna get into that because that's not. We're gonna get derailed.
Yeah, this is yes, Andrew. I know you believe that, and you might be correct, but we're not going to argue about that at this moment in time.
It's pertinent to the argument. The accusation is if
Yeah,
I
he just
behave
calls you a
this way,
psychopath.
if I behave this way, absent morality, it's psychopathy. This is the allegation. He
He's
says
not
he doesn't have
diagnosing
to
you.
answer
Hold on.
to the allegation.
Hold on. He's not diagnosing you
Okay.
clinically. He's making the point that you are essentially, if a psychopath was a thing, you'd be something like that.
Why would
Well,
you
hold
be-
on, hold on.
That doesn't even
My
make
show.
sense. How could you be a psychopath if there's no morality? How would you even judge that somebody was suffering from your illusion of what
That's what
psychopathy even is?
That's what a hypothetical psychopath would say, that there is no such thing as psychopathy if there is no morality. But Chris,
Yeah,
I actually agree with
can
Andrew
I
here,
say something
because
really
I would.
quick? Because
Okay.
because that is how you actually diagnose a psychopath. If like
No, you don't diagnose a psychopath.
Yeah, he's not going to let you get away with that one.
No. But
You know, because there are no psychopaths.
Let me just tell you this. They found that people that
No, they
have
haven't.
psychopathic tendencies,
No.
like little kids, like 6-year-old kids.
No, nobody's ever found this. This is a complete fabrication.
No. Okay.
Okay, this is
listen,
a less
listen to me.
interesting conversation. But
No.
most
But this is
interesting
important
conversation.
because kids with psychopathic tendencies, if the
There
teacher
are no kids with
tells them,
psychopathic tendencies.
okay, Andrew,
tells them
you-
that
you-
it's okay.
you gotta let him at
to
least finish his whole
punch,
point.
Another kid in the class. A normal kid would say, "Okay, usually I should obey what my teacher says. Usually I have to do what my teacher says. But in that case, it's still not okay to punch my fellow classmate in the face." But a psychopathic child
There
would
are no
say,
psychopathic
"Well,
children.
that's the rules. My teacher told me it's okay to punch my classmate in the face, so it's okay." That's exactly what a psychopathic child would say.
That's exactly what a figment of your imagination would say.
okay,
Because you just made the whole thing up. So here, let me
No,
back
it's
up.
not. No,
There's no say on.
that's
There's no
something I
such
got
thing as a
from
psycho. Listen,
psychiatrist. I think
there's
Stuart
no
Peterson
such
said
thing
that.
as a psychopath. If you're there, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you right now. If you can demonstrate that there's a such thing as a psychopath, that it's inside of the DSM-5, the latest, psychoanalysis, whatever, if you can demonstrate that live right now, I'll send you $100 cash. Go ahead.
It doesn't
Okay.
matter to me. You know what I mean by psychopath.
I know. This
No,
is what
I
I'm
don't
talking
know
about.
what
This
you
is a
mean by
complete
psychopath.
stop. I'm going to mute both of you. Hold on. First off, Andrew, you're probably right. There's probably no diagnosis. It's called antisocial personality disorder in the
That's
DSM.
not a psychopath.
Fine. But
But that's what I mean by
That's what exactly. This is my point. He
can't
used the
be
word
what you mean.
psychopath. Stop.
No.
It's
That
exactly
can't
what
be
I
what he
mean.
means.
I'm gonna,
I
I
can
swear to
prove
God,
this.
I'm going to
Paul.
mute both of you. Hold on. The psychopath conversation is one we can have later. I don't want to have it right now. It's not interesting. Hold on. There's two things. Number one, I want to get Pine Creek Doug on here in a sec. But the second, Jim
Well,
Bob.
that's fine.
And
If you want to get Pine Creek Doug on here, so it's a dog pile, then I want Jim Bob to come on here with Pine Creek Doug.
I said I'd bring Jim Bob on. He said he didn't want to come on though. So hold on. But Jim Bob is welcome on. If I bring Pine Creek on, Jim Bob can come on. We can have a metaphysical panel. So hold on. Let's go through these super chats. Also, your wife asked one. So Chris, can the highest peaks of well-being be obtained by people who cause harm in order to achieve that state? According to him, is so your position is over. But the first question, can the highest peaks of well-being be obtained by people who cause harm in order to achieve that?
No. I don't agree with that because Yeah, in a certain sense, yes, because people are more valuable than animals, for instance. And why are they more valuable? Because they're capable of obtaining higher peaks of well-being. So yes, and it's an inconvenient fact that there are probably people that are capable of achieving higher peaks of well-being than other people. But still, we shouldn't design a society around that knowledge, because you would then have weird hierarchies that are everything else but conducive to well-being. So we should still adhere to the principle that every person is created equal. No, I wouldn't agree with this position.
Pretty religious claim. And then your lovely wife, Andrew, donated a super chat in my chat, which is makes her even more lovely. Even though she said I was retarded from doing too many psychedelics. We'll move past that.
She's right on both fronts.
Well, potentially. If the ultimate moral imperative is to avoid human suffering, why not eliminate humanity? Oh, this is the antinatalist argument. This is what I laid to you, Chris.
Yeah, we talked about
from your worldview, why should we not do that? It's the logical extension of your position, which I kind of agree with. I don't know about your position particularly, but it's certainly the logical extension of the position that I believe you are representing. So great question, Rachel.
I don't remember because I already answered that question. I think. Do you remember, Paul, what my retort was to that?
You don't. Hang on. Wait. No. You don't get to ask Paul what your position is to the question.
Okay,
just answer
Andrew,
the question, dude.
Shut up for a second.
That's bullshit, Paul.
Hold on. This is not a debate on the Crucible. This is my show. I will allow people to ask me questions. We had this conversation before. He's asking for a refresher, and then he can answer the question.
He wants you to give him his answer,
Andrew,
Paul?
Andrew, this is my show. You agree to it. So just give me a sec. Okay? And we'll both walk away from this unharmed.
Yeah, go ahead. You answer his question, Paul.
I will. No, I will answer the refresh.
Yeah.
You said something to the effect, Chris, that anyone who's advocating for antinatalism or something like that is basically not invited to the table. So if you were having a conversation about physics, you wouldn't ask some random person to have a conversation about metaphysics. You want qualified people. So if you're having a conversation about morality, which you view as sort of a science, you wouldn't allow like the Taliban or people like antinatalists to come to the table. That was my recollection of your response. But by all means, feel free to. Apparently, Andrew's running my show, which I'm not. I won't use the mute button unless you force me to, Andrew, and both of you. But we're also going to bring on Pine Creek Doug and Jim Bob, and then there are no rules at that point. So,
okay,
go ahead.
I remember saying that, but that wasn't in response to this objection about why not kill everybody if valuing
so go ahead.
Is the most important thing.
What is the
what I
response to that?
said was, first of all, the typical antinatalist. Antinatal, so being bringing life into existence, entails the belief, on the whole, life contains more suffering than a pleasurable experience, so you shouldn't bring more life into existence. It doesn't mean that you then should kill everybody in his sleep, like this question implies. That there's a difference there.
So what if we could demonstrate then that people experience more suffering than they do pleasure? Shouldn't the logical extension then be that we shouldn't bring in human beings, even if they have the potential for pleasure, because they experience more suffering than pleasure?
If you could know that, if you could know for sure this human being or this being brought into life is going to have more suffering than good in their life, then of course it's
but that's not my question. What if there's within the potentiality of it, if you're able to demonstrate that on average for almost all people this is the case, they experience more suffering than they do pleasure? Then shouldn't the extension of that be to err on the side that almost everybody who's ever born is going to then experience more suffering than pleasure? So why allow anybody to ever be born?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's
insane.
I think that makes sense, but it's not insane, because I don't think that we live in this kind of world. I don't think that life contains more suffering.
We could live in that kind of world easily.
Yeah, but we don't.
Yeah, so but we could. That's actually something which we could do. We could live in a world where most people experienced more suffering than they did pleasure.